Hi, everybody. I thought that we would just invite you to our weekly roundtable discussion that we have regularly on the market. Not talk just about what happened, how the year wrapped up in 2018, but where we think that the market might be going in 2019 and some of the trends we're seeing. So what puts this group, I think, in the chair of experts is that last year we were probably in about 3,000 homes that were either on the market or getting ready to be on the market. And after 20 years of doing this, I think that puts us in a unique position to know what's going on. So with that, why don't you tell us, Brian, a little bit about 2018 and where the numbers ended up.
So in 2018, we had another strong real estate market across the Kansas City metropolitan. We finished the year with about 40,000 units sold, and when we compare that to 2017, we saw about 1% growth. So not a huge change in the growth rate, but 2017 was an excellent year as well. So we're just glad to see, people are still moving around quite a bit. The biggest change we did notice is the sales price increased by 6.5%, which is a pretty crazy number to compare even to last year in 2017.
That's pretty hefty.
The days on market is another number we look at to see how quick things are moving, and that was about 48 days. I believe last year was about 44, so we didn't really see too much change in the days on market, but again, the sales price was the biggest impact we saw. When we do compare days on market, it's kind of a skewed number, so to speak, because it is the average days on market. So, you could look at a $10 million home that sits on the market for 3 years or so, and then, in Blue Valley and the Johnson County area, those homes under 350 are selling within days. So, you really have to look at the different micro pockets within the area to really understand what the days on market or how it's going to impact your home and your position.
So overall, the market in Kansas City still seems to be relatively healthy. I know economically we've got a strong job market with unemployment less than 4%. So how do you think, and I'll just ask you, Dan, how do you think customer confidence is just overall? What are you seeing?
I think that we still are subject to media skew or bias, and I think that there's bad news sells, and I think the media especially likes to promote bad news, which I think may cause some fear. But overall, I think we're seeing a ton of optimism in the marketplace, cautious optimism, and we're trending stable, if not, growing. And as long as we prepare well and have customers well clear of what the market is and what their objectives are, we're pretty bullish. We're pretty excited, I think, overall. So I know I am.
How about the investor market, Ross? I mean, I know you're working with a lot of investors and have talked to a lot of investors and trying to find properties for investors. So what are you seeing from an investor standpoint?
Yeah, so the investment space is an interesting one, just being that in the last couple of months, I've had 2 instances that have never happened to me in all of selling real estate. I've had houses that were, around 150, 160, a typical 3-bed, 1-bath, or 2-bed or 1-bath, something like that. And the house has been on the market for 25, 30 days, which is longer than what is typical. And the people would put an offer in, $20,000, $15,000 under asking price, just to sort of throw their hat in the ring, and the seller would take it because they're reaching a bit that the house has been on the market a little while, and I've never had that before happen, and both the buyer and the seller were happy. The buyer said, "Is there something wrong with it? Do you think that we sniped it or something like that?" So that's never happened to me, and I think that may continue to happen, being that maybe the time of year the houses stay on the market a little bit longer in November and December, but I also think it's due in large part to the fact that there are more, the supply is catching back up. Investors aren't as, desperate to keep their crews working or ready. And, I think my investors have had a lot of luck lately. And like I said, that the scenario is getting better for those investor buyers. That's what I'm seeing.
So that brings up an interesting point just about concessions overall, and I'm just wondering, Mike, I know you work with a wide variety of buyers and sellers. Like, what kind of concessions are you seeing? Are you seeing any trends, like, or, people on either side, buyers or sellers, how are they giving and taking? Anything unusual out there?
Again, like Ross said, I think it depends on the situation. I think there's no concessions the shorter the house is on the market. Day one, day two, multiple offers. You're having to not only not ask for concessions, but forego some of the protections of the contract in terms of inspections or financing or things like that. Different price points, different longer days on market, things like that. You're seeing more concessions from sellers, like Ross said, is that people, while they're not desperate, maybe they price the house shooting for the moon and realized, okay, it's probably not quite worth that. It's sat here for 30 days. 30 days right now for a cream puff property in the right area is kind of like 6 months used to be. Because if it's sitting for 30 days and you think it's priced right and it's in one of those top tier areas and it's got a good lot, it's got all the things that check the box and it's not selling, well, it can mean two things, price or condition. And if you know it's in good shape, then it's got to mean one thing, it's price. So if you get that offer or you get somebody asking for a contingency or concessions, we're seeing more of that from sellers because they realize, hey, maybe it's not quite worth what we thought it was.
Cool.
I want to make a point there too. It's an interesting dichotomy for me telling my less knowledgeable first-time buyers or just a younger type people who don't know as much about real estate, explaining to them that even though the house has been on the market 30 days, there may not be something wrong with it because they see, oh, it's been on the market 30, 40 days. They think maybe something is wrong with it because they're used to seeing something, a day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. And so while there very well may be something wrong with it, in most cases there's not. It's just the condition right now of the market.
So the speed of the market is definitely having an impact, then, it sounds like, on just the whole perception, right, of buyers. So that's interesting. So then we'll just jump in and I'll just ask you, so tell me, what do you think is going to be happening in the market in 2019? Where do you think things are going?
I might even ask the team to answer that, but what I'd like to say is looking at this roundtable, the expertise here and the perspective of the market is very different than what a typical real estate organization might see. We are very balanced in our listing transactions and our buyer transactions. We also have a mid-range clientele, and we have a high-end, upper-range clientele. And it's an interesting perspective to see the different micro markets that Brian alluded to, especially in the areas in Kansas that need to be acted independently. Some markets, some areas, some neighborhoods are hotter than others. And there's a lot of discernment that needs to happen in order to know how to advise someone, whether you're buying or selling. A lot of dynamics, pricing, days on the market, is something wrong? There just needs to be a lot of wisdom in ascertaining what's in a buyer or seller's best interest. And this group has a lot of expertise in doing that, which is very unique with the skill sets that are here. And we're pretty balanced and we're pretty objective. So give that question to somebody else about what they're seeing.
Okay. How about you, Brian? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that, well, over the last 3 years, we've seen just this acceleration of momentum going up. And the common story is just the lack of homes for sale. With new construction and existing, it kind of created a bottleneck effect and really low interest rates. Now we're starting to see those interest rates climb a little bit. There's some predictions that's going to happen next year. Luckily, it hasn't made too big of an impact on the consumer level for mortgages of interest rates. I think the last deal we closed was around 5% for that individual. But I think it's all positive. It's a way to kind of stabilize the market, because anybody trying to buy a home last year, they knew in the spring it was very aggressive, and it was just very challenging for a lot of people, which also caused a concern for people selling homes, because you sell a home and then
Where am I going to live? Yeah.
So what we're seeing is we're in this transition period where it's more of a stabilization. The momentum's slowing down a little bit. You're getting a little bit more supply, a little bit more days on market, so it allows more flexibility and better decision making. So overall, I think it's going to be another great year. People like to skew data and say, it's doomsday and all that stuff, but in our area, we just have a historically great economic development going on and pretty low unemployment rate, so it's kind of the perfect storm in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think Brian hit that right nail on the head. I think the market's going to stay strong. I don't think it's going to dip like it, did years ago. I think, people have to be prepared. Sellers need to be prepared. You still have to go the extra mile, make sure your house is in A-plus condition. If it's not in one of those primo areas, if it is in one of those primo areas, make sure it's in great condition and make sure you don't, make sure you price it right. Make sure you get the right advice and you price it right, because by doing that, it can take all the things we've talked about and really make it successful, from days on market and ending price and all of those things. So
How do people know if they're pricing their home right?
it's a collective, collaborative thing between your advisor and you. Just like what they think it's worth and what we tell them it's worth, and there is some leeway in that. There's not a black and white pricing scheme in any of these homes. So I think you take what they think and why they think, and you take the data, and then you take the market knowledge. And I think that's the biggest thing, is the market knowledge. Just because you see something on paper doesn't mean that's what it's worth, because of all the variables that go into it. So I think it's all of that collectively, and you come to a price collectively.
Cool. How about you, Russ? What do you think investors are going to do?
From an investment standpoint, I think there will be much more activity, much more single-family homes around 150 and under 200 selling in and around northern Johnson County, Overland Park. I think that activity will grow or will increase. But for the most part, like I said, the people that I work with, first-time buyers, I think there's still a lot of supply for them, a lot of choices for them, and I think overall as stable as it could be.
And that really is good news for first-time home buyers, because there was a period there they were being pushed out of the market from investors. They just couldn't compete. So that's really good news for first-time home buyers.
Mike, I'd like to know what you think. You do a lot of work at the high end, and a couple of years ago, within the last 2 or 3 years, we've been talking about, should I buy before I sell, or should I wait and sell before I buy? And maybe for the mid to high end, what's your take on that idea?
I feel like I keep repeating myself. I think the high end is even more imperative, to where people are buying high-end homes. People are buying homes between $500 and over $1 million, which is the high end. And when you get above that $500, $600, $700,000 mark, you have to make sure that you have a product that somebody wants. And while that's a great lot, or that's a really unique house, or something it's got to stand out. If it doesn't stand out, there is inventory in that price range, and it is going to sit on the market, and it is going to have issues if it doesn't stand out, if it's not priced correctly. So you can fix it not standing out by pricing it correctly, where we've seen a lot of it where you go and you look to that $500,000 to $800,000 range, and there's just kind of a lot of homes that are okay, and those are the ones that aren't selling. So I think it'll be a strong year. I think there's still a lot of move-up buyers going from that second to third to fourth house, to where it should be a great year in the upper end if people do what they're supposed to do, make sure they don't get crazy with their prices, and again, they have to have something that differentiates them if you want your property to stand out, because there is inventory in that price range that isn't standing out and that's sitting on the market. So I think it should be strong if people take that into account.
Of course, one of the buzzwords has been rising interest rates for 2019. The Fed's been talking about that. How do you think, does anybody have any opinion on how that might impact our local market?
I don't think our local market is drastically impacted. Interest rates matter, but also what people forget is interest rates are projected over a 30-year period. And if we take the average, I think the average person is in their loan less than 4 years, and don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what I was told. So the interest rates between 4% and 5% over 4 years is nothing, a 1% difference, because rates are going to go up and go back down, and people are going to refi, they're going to move. Even if that's not the case, even if somebody, I don't know of anybody, and you got that we have as a client that has stayed in a loan for 30 years. Everybody refied when they had the opportunity, and so I think even if they're at 5% and people plan to stay in it for a long time, I don't think it's going to affect our rate, our market in a negative way. It affects affordability a little bit, but also we see in our market and the clientele we work with is we're not encouraging people to stretch to their max affordability on an approval. So if you're stretching to your max affordability, we should probably reevaluate what you're doing, because it's usually not in your best interest. So I really don't think it's going to have a negative impact on our market, and that's just across the metro, I believe.
So a little interest rate bump could be nominal and a monthly payment over time.
Very nominal, yeah.
And you'll start seeing that kind of balance with the sales price, the average sales price, and that's the reasoning behind raising interest rates. You raise the interest rates, sales price goes down a little bit. So it's just kind of trying to swing the pendulum so it falls even. But like you said, in our market, with a lot of the people we recommend and advise buying, it shouldn't affect your affordability much. And with the economics we have in Kansas City, we don't really see a big impact on it.
One of the conclusions I hear the panel talking about is the market timing and the opportunity for buyers and sellers. In the last 2 or 3 years, as Brian alluded to, it's been crazy. Springtime has been taking a lot of young, low to mid-range buyers out of the market because the competition has been so fierce that you've just got to deploy a lot of very key strategies, which our team is excellent at, to advise buyers to compete in a tough market where there's multiple people competing for the same house. The expertise that is needed to do that is astronomical. It's really important, and we're good at that, really good at that. However, this year it seems like there might be buyers may be able to breathe a little bit. There might be an opportunity where they don't have to run and act in minutes, literally, or hours. They might have some time to breathe and react and look at a little bit of inventory before they have to make a decision. That is yet to be seen. But I think we might see a little bit more days on market, and people can maybe take a little bit of time and deploy some thought and before they act. I think rising interest rates can do that. It can soften, maybe stabilize, not soften, but just calm the market down a little bit and put things more in a balanced state than they've been kind of out of balance in the last few years. So it's exciting. It's exciting to be doing this at this time, and I think it's going to be a really good, healthy year for buyers and sellers, as far as I'm concerned.
So a more balanced market then is what I'm hearing, and that looks like what the word of 2019 is going to be. So if you have any questions and would want to sit down with any of our experts here, please call us and schedule that appointment today.